Hello, everyone. Jim Biringer here, NHLRumors.com, here in the midst of the NHL offseason. Some big names out there, some big news yet to happen. Big arbitration hearing on Saturday. We had a general manager step down, or was he forced out? We had an offer sheet matched. We had some contracts taken care of. We got two franchise players locked up, waiting on a third. And, again, we're at cottage time. It's the off season. There's not a lot of things going on in the National Hockey League, but everybody's paying attention to this Saturday, September 25th. No, it's not SummerSlam. Get out. That's a couple weeks away. Jason Robertson and the Dallas Stars arbitration hearing. The player elected to go to salary arbitration. There were offer sheets on the table. He rejected a trade to Seattle, to St. Louis, and to some other places, which indicate he wants to stay in Dallas. The offer sheet is off the table since the player elected at the beginning of July, on July 5th, to go to salary arbitration. Will it get there? There's still some time between now and Saturday at 9 a.m. when the hearing will take place. But if it gets to the hearing, it's a one-year deal, and there's no turning back. Once the meeting happens, it could get ugly, it could get personal. There's going to be shots and there's going to be criticisms both ways. This seemed to be the plan all along from Robertson. If he wanted 15, could have taken it in Seattle, but he wants to win and doesn't want to go to Seattle. St. Louis offered him money too, didn't want to go there. What about Pittsburgh? There's been rumors of a trade talks between them, but he doesn't maybe feel Pittsburgh's ready to win. His heart's in Dallas, down in the Big D, the big state of Texas, and here we are, right? Can Jim Nill, who's wanted to get a deal done with Jason Robertson, get it done before Saturday? Sure. Will it be an 8-year deal if they do get it done? Well, that's what the Stars want. The player probably wants it too, but he wants it at $14 million, not 12 or 12 and a half, which the team is offered. Do they settle somewhere at 13? 13.75. Is it even an 8-year deal? We're seeing more and more players trying to maximize their value on the open market. And look, could he take a 4 or 5-year deal? Sure, that's definitely an option. But it feels like the trade winds of Jason Robertson could be slowing down, because if he was going to get traded, he probably would have been moved by now. And, you talk about teams like Detroit potentially as a bargaining chip. But again, when we get to Detroit, maybe the general manager, who's no longer the general manager, didn't feel an extension was coming with that player. He's still in Dallas. There's still a few days left to get a deal done. Where do they settle? Because if it gets to the hearing, it's going to get ugly. As we mentioned, the Detroit Red Wings. Dylan Larkin hasn't been traded yet. Steve Yzerman stepped down, though. Very shocking. Came out of nowhere, but not surprising. Maybe not even shocking to some, because we all saw this coming. The Detroit Red Wings have not made the playoffs since 2016. He's been there 7 years. What other general manager gets 7 years and no playoffs? Steve Yzerman, because he was a legend as a player. Chris Ilitch liked him. Mike Ilitch is no longer in charge. The problem is the proof is in the pudding. If you were going to get rid of him, why didn't you get rid of him before the draft and free agency? And who's going to replace him? That's the million-dollar question. Who's really going to replace him there? And that was part of the reason why Dylan Larkin asked for a trade. He saw Steve Yzerman not improving the team, whether it was internally or externally. Yeah, they brought in players, Justin Falk, David Perron, that's great. But it sounds, from the sounds of it, Dylan Larkin wanted guys from the AHL to come up. Lombardi's no longer there. Edward no longer there. Cosen's no longer there. And Steve Yzerman refused to push these players up through the chain. And as mentioned on SiriusXM NHL Network Radio with Mick Kern last week, you look at it and it feels like the Detroit way has always been overripe them in the AHL, but they don't have 20 Hall of Famers waiting there anymore. There's no Hall of Fame player stopping any of these players. And Steve Yzerman, whatever the case was, didn't want to promote the kids, didn't feel like they were ready, no handouts, things like that. Well, the problem is it's a young man's NHL, and when the captain of the team wants the players from the AHL up and thinks they can help him, that means he's watching and is a student of the game. So they definitely butted heads. Larkin and Yzerman butted heads before his extension was signed 3 years ago. So look, now that Steve Yzerman stepped down, maybe he was forced out. There's all reports that the team was going to fire him, and to save grace, they mutually agreed that this was the best way to do it. Now, Yzerman's still the GM until they hire somebody, but he then will be a senior advisor to Chris Ilitch. Okay, big deal, senior advisor. That's what Jim Rutherford is in Vancouver. Hey, look, but Dylan Larkin, the ask for Dylan Larkin was high. It was, rostered players back, first round draft picks. It wasn't for futures. It wasn't going to keep this rebuild going that's already taken 10 years and could take longer. So you don't want to extend it and become Buffalo Sabres 2.0, which are in that territory now. Dylan Larkin has more Olympic games played than Stanley Cup playoff games played. That's shocking, but not with this Steve Yzerman team. And Yzerman, the issue with Yzerman and the Red Wings was he never, allowed the kids to play. And he signed Andrew Kopp and JT Compher at the wrong time. The team needed to be bad, like we saw in Montreal for a few years, and get another high draft pick, get another franchise player. They needed to really be bad in the Bedard draft year, in the Celebrini draft year. And whether it worked out or not, it doesn't matter. As we saw with the Toronto Maple Leafs, the plan was to, keep their first round draft pick and then ended up getting them Gavin McKenna. Detroit, yes, you want a winner, but fans want to understand the plan. And it didn't seem like Steve Yzerman had a plan. And maybe Yzerman realized that today's NHL, he's just not cut out for it anymore, considering the long negotiations with Lucas Raymond and Mo Seider. Simon Evison isn't signed. What about an Alex DeBrincat extension? Players are going to get paid now. What he thinks is valuable to a team is no longer value to a team. He can't be a hard negotiator when the new wave of talent's going to get over 10 million. The young talent, anyway, we're seeing it around the league. So Steve Yzerman is going to step away. Do they go internally with a guy like Sean Horkoff? Do they go externally with Brett Peterson or Darren York or guys like that we always hear? Brendan Shanahan, Ryan Martin, Tyler Dello. The list goes on of guys that are there. And you have to wonder about that because, look, Steve Yzerman is smart in the fact that he believes that Larkin has a price and he's not going to budge off that price, which is fine. But at some point, this team has to move on from him. And if it was Sean Horkoff, wouldn't it been done by now or the same day as Yzerman stepped down? That's why they're looking outside this organization. They got to get it right, similar to what the Nashville Predators did, hiring Chris McFarland, but they don't have a Nick Saban type guy in there that can answer the right questions. So the Detroit Red Wings are fascinating, not only the GM front, but the Dylan Larkin front. When do they move off of him? Is Simon Emerson going to sign an extension? Has he been offer sheeted? Carolina's lurking. Could they move off of him? Steve Yzerman's biggest sin was not getting Quinn Hughes. And jokingly, I said during an appearance on SiriusXM that Quinn Hughes ruined 3 franchises: Vancouver Canucks, New Jersey Devils, and now the Detroit Red Wings. But if Steve Yzerman wasn't so hardline about an extension, Quinn Hughes is in Detroit right now, not Minnesota. So again, decision-making on trades, not understanding the market, not understanding negotiations, an internal battle with players cost him his job. We'll see what happens with Dylan Larkin. We're also going to see what happens on Connor Hellebuyck. We're waiting on trade, but that's kind of dead right now. Around the draft, Buffalo and Winnipeg, we're talking Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, Josh Norris. We're key pieces around that. Unfortunately, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen now has no trade clause. He's got to waive. The Sabres wanted the Jets' 8th overall pick, but the Jets didn't want to give that up. Don't blame the Jets, because if you're going to give a franchise player away, you're going to keep 2 first-round draft picks for it. Now, there were talks about New Jersey. New Jersey's got David Riddick. They got Nico Dawes, Jake Allen. But is that the trio they really want to roll with? Does Carolina snoop around again? Not really big market right now. Buffalo makes the most sense for Connor Hellebuyck, but there are other teams out there that need goaltending. Again, the price is high to get Connor Hellebuyck out of Winnipeg. When do both guys go? We're going to find out. Probably later on. But again, with the Winnipeg Jets, they have time. Same with Dylan Larkin. Both guys have got multiple years left on his deal. It's not like either player's entering the final year of their deal. So situations to watch in Detroit, Winnipeg, Dallas. Again, Detroit, who do they go to? Is it Chris Clark? Is it Evan Gold? Guys like that, Brandon Pridham, that I didn't mention early on. Winnipeg, multiple trying to get suitors for Hellebuyck. Then we have the offer sheet. Leo Carlsson, Ducks match it. 5 times 18 from Philadelphia. Once it was matched, Drysdale and Zegras get their extensions. They were avoiding arbitration all along. Both guys get their short-term deal. And as we're seeing around the league now, more and more young players taking that Austin Matthews 5-year deal at an entry level, walking them right to free agency, unrestricted free agency. The trend that was coming when Austin Matthews was a trendsetter under the flat cap, we're finally seeing a rising cap where players want to maximize their value multiple times. Here we are. Zegras gets 9.125, Drysdale around 6.75. Both contracts are good. 5 years for Zegras, 4 years for Drysdale. It's perfect because Flyers have gone long-term before, and it burnt them. The Ducks, it's a great look. Leo Carlsson is now the highest paid player in the league. Kaprizov is the second highest paid player in the league. But Anaheim has work to do. Got signed Cutter Gauthier. This has got to get done. He's going to get over 10. They're going to have to move out Alex Killorn. They're going to have to move out Frank Vetrano, Chris Kreider, somebody to make the money work. With Leo Carlsson at 18, over the weekend, the Chicago Blackhawks announced Connor Bedard, 5 times $15 million, third highest paid player in the league. Bedard believes in the vision of the team. He was going to stay there. He wasn't signing an offer sheet. Maybe Patrick Kane joins him in Chicago. Kane talking about Chicago and Buffalo potentially. But Bedard is the franchise player for that team. Getting a 5-year deal. Again, shoulder injury, missed the first 6 weeks of the season. But Chicago's got to show progress. They have to continue to be better. They just can't be stagnant, be okay. They have to be better. They have to show Montreal progress. They haven't. Yes, Bo Byram is there, 6 times 12.5. But now we're seeing everybody of that crop of free agents that were eligible for offer sheets and Bedard, Carlsson have signed. Where does Adam Fantilli fit with the Columbus Blue Jackets? Is that a 5-year deal? Does that come in at $15 million? Does that come in at $16 million? Or is it a longer-term deal from the Columbus side of things? They want to get a longer-term deal done. Chicago want a longer-term. Again, Bedard wanted it somewhere around here. That's how they get it done. Again, now all eyes on Fantilli. What's going to happen with him? All eyes on Robertson. What's the number going to look like for Dallas? Again, hard times in Dallas could be coming up against the cap. What happens with Tyler Seguin? Can they figure out a way to free up some money there? Not going to move Wyatt Johnson. Can't afford to lose another piece. So, yes, while the offseason is quiet, while the NHL needs to embrace an offseason like this, there are major storylines out there everybody's watching. And the big-name players, Robertson, Hellebuyck, Larkin, Fantilli, guys like that, everybody's paying attention to see what comes next. This is Jim Biringer, NHLRumors.com. Please subscribe to the channel, like this video, comment as well. We'll be back again real soon. Take care.